today, as we get ready to delve into loving kindness, I want to ask about something related to the email for the week. If you read it, I talked about how I had a taxi ride and I was sort of annoyed at my taxi driver. He wasn't wearing a mask. He was a little bit impatient. And I was initially thinking, I'm not going to give him a tip. And then I'm like, we're studying loving kindness this week, and you're supposed to support people even if they don't deserve it. So I said, let me just experiment with not withholding my tip. I'm just going to give him a normal tip. And he was in such a hurry that he just wrote down my credit card number and he drove off, and there was never a chance for me to leave him a tip. And it was so interesting. I thought about it and I'm like, I think if I had really stuck to my guns about stiffing him for the tip, I might have even been a little bit annoyed that I didn't get a chance to do that. But because I was just going to not judge him and figured he must be having a bad day, I really felt like reinforced. It's like, wow, he really must have been late. This really, for whatever reason, this fare did not work for him. And that's and I'm not sort of telling this story to talk about what a great guy I am. There's plenty of times when I don't get it right. But what's interesting to me was that because I just kind of engaged with this practice, it really made me think about the situation differently. And it made me think about the driver differently, and the whole experience, I think, had a little bit of a richer, deeper tone. And it's along the lines of what one of the things Alan Moranis taught is that it's all grist for the Mussar mill. That anything that happens in life, we can use that as an opportunity to view it through a Mussar lens and see what we might be able to learn. So the question I want to open with is to give people an opportunity to share where maybe they had a moment of mindfulness and what would be just considered an ordinary or unremarkable situation. Yes, Karen.
Very quickly, that reminded me of a story of when I was young, maybe 8 or 9 years old, and my grandmother was visiting at the house. We had had a fight in the morning, and she had gone out. And when she came back, I was sitting on the front stoop, and she handed me a bag. She bought something for me. And I said to her, why did you buy this for me? Why'd you get me a gift? And she said, because you're my granddaughter and I love you. And I saw this and I thought of you and I just wanted to give it to you. And I realized sometime way later that it wasn't about the actions. It wasn't about life wasn't so much at that moment about our interactions as it was about our relationship. I mattered more than what happened. And now, years later, I don't remember what the interaction was about that was so negative, but I remember that she was trying to say to me, that's small potatoes. What matters is that I love you and I thought of you and I wanted to do something for you. And she wasn't looking for anything back, but she probably knew that was going to happen anyway, that I would just love her back. So that was a great lesson for me.
Thank you. What was your grandmother's name?
Golda.
Golda. Well, thank you for sharing Golda's wonderful story about Golda with us and sharing the blessing of her memory with us. Other thoughts? A little bit of a more challenging prompt today, perhaps. Yeah, Haya.
I don't know if this quite is exactly what we're talking about, but I think somewhat. I've been trying to get an appointment with my doctor. I've had some symptoms of some stuff that I need to deal with. And with what's going on, it seems like, My doctor, I can't see till like April. And then I might be able to see some other doctor, you know, miles away within the same community of doctors, but that might be maybe a month away. And I'm having symptoms at this time. But I got a hold of this guy on the phone for the scheduling. And I said, really? Is this really the way it is? And he goes, yeah, it's the way it is. And I said, well, you know, is there a difference between virtual or being seen in, you know, and the guy, you know, he finally found an appointment for me. He put it in and then he said, oh my God, I screwed this whole thing up. I said, so it can be fixed, can't it? And, you know, so at the very end, it's just, I don't know, this is one of the Mussars that I really feel connected to. And I mean, I said, I think his name was Henry. I said, Henry, you're so wonderful. Thank you for the work that you did. Henry, thank you. We'll talk to you later. No, something to that effect. You know, I get really excited. The thing that I need to learn in the terms of compassion and loving kindness is actually about self-compassion that I sometimes forget about.
Thank you, Chaya. Well, all three of these examples really were about, you know, relationships, and as Golda had said, or the lesson Golda was teaching, it's about, you know, how we relate to other people. It's not about like the things that happen, you know, the particular details of the incident. Irene.
There. I had trouble unmuting. I was trying to think of one where someone had done me a kindness. And I remembered that this was a significant kindness. When I was in college, there was one, I was taking 2 math courses, and there was one math course that I was absolutely failing. And I needed it to graduate from school. It was my senior year. And the other math course, I was doing okay in, not great, but okay. And I guess I was pretty upset. And I guess I must have spoken to my teacher and of the math course that I was doing okay in. And he said to me that he would tutor me in the other class, and I wouldn't have to take his final, and he'd give me a C. And he tutored me, and I passed the other class, and I graduated from college, and it was all okay. And he spent a lot of time with me, tutoring me for the other math class.
Wow.
Yeah. And it meant a lot to me. I mean, I still remember it. How many years later?
Yeah, that's an incredibly kind thing that he did for you. Thank you for sharing that. Randy.
Yeah, I don't know quite how to say it. I think often we think about loving kindness as involving other people, but I think I ran across, it was a quote, it said that the world is built on loving kindness. And maybe it's a different way of looking, but it's like the universe has put loving kindness all, good all throughout the world. And the things we call loving kindness, sometimes they're like the little key, the little thing that we do. And often we think, when you were talking about the taxi ride, I've been thinking all week about some things, it's the things we don't do, when we could be upset. I was thinking, we often hear about good things people have done in the world, but only the universe sees the bad things we could have done and didn't. And those, perhaps, maybe those are bigger things, I don't know. It's like and I was thinking too, we start each session with a moment of like meditation and silence. And it's maybe not one of the Mussar steps, but it's so important. I was thinking how often being quiet allows us to realize, to have an empty place where that loving kindness that's around us can come in, and I don't know how to say it. It's like I can feel sort of lifted up in it's like my value in the universe is a little bit more just from that minute. And I don't know quite how to say that, but I've been very thoughtful on that, because I have some things where I don't do well in life and been struggling with, and it's like, oh, I don't feel very grateful about this or that or the other thing. And it's like, well, I can't bring myself to do the right thing, but I can bring myself to sort of quiet a little bit. And there's something at work in that moment that I don't know quite how to say that. I would call it loving kindness, but it's maybe a little different than in doing for, I mean, even if I think of this whole class, that we tend to be so full of ourselves. And I think most of what comes about in the world is from getting balanced again, and it releases that loving kindness. You know, a person can be like a workaholic or so involved in something else, and just turning that one key unlocks like a whole universe of possibilities. I know I talk maybe a little too much. I've been thinking on that. I can't quite put my finger on it.
Well, thank you, Randy. And yeah, you know, these, it's okay to kind of go deep and percolate and wrestle with these things. You know, they're not really designed to be, you know, it's not like teabag wisdom. Like sometimes there's something, you know, or often I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting, you know, what's on the tea bag. But this is, you know, when you're looking at a practice, it's really something you're thinking about. You're thinking carefully and deeply about your life and trying to stay awake and stay aware. And the answers aren't always clear, you know, but it's that process of considering that really, really has the impact. Yes, Carol, and then Harry.
I recently received a very unexpected gift from somebody I would not expect to give me a gift, especially one as wonderful and special as this one. And it just happened to come at the best time, and it's in the best way. But as I say, this was not somebody that I'd normally expect to give me a gift, and not this kind of gift. And I know it was done from the loving kindness of this person's heart. And to receive a gift like that and to know that it's extraordinary. It's really difficult to explain how extraordinary it is. And I have received a number of other kinds of gifts from people throughout the pandemic, because I've needed a lot of help and had a lot of issues. But to receive this beautiful thing, and I'll share what it is, because it's a robotic cat. Okay. Oh, it's still meowing. I forgot it was turned on. And it's something to cuddle when I feel really terrible and really sick, and I can't have a real pet, so it's the next best thing. It's wonderful. It's amazing. It's been like, I don't know, it's just amazing. That's all.
Thank you, Carol. That's a very cute cat too. Harry.
Yeah, I was just sort of thinking, do you think loving kindness, the act of loving kindness, is innate, or is it a learned trait? Does it come naturally? Or
I think that it does. I mean, it's a soul trait. It's you know, it's a trait that we all have. I think kids naturally like to share things, and yeah, so I think it's a part of who we are.
I
Absolutely.
sort of agree. I just brought it out because I saw it a couple of years ago in my 3 or 4-year-old grandson who was in a swimming pool, and he happened to have 2 squirt guns. And one of the kids, took the squirt gun and started playing with it. And, he didn't care because he had the other squirt gun. But then the kid's other brother wanted the squirt gun, and they had a fight. And then I saw my grandson take his squirt gun and give it to the grandson, the other one. I'm sorry, the other son, the other brother, so that they both had squirt guns. And no one said anything to him. He just saw the conflict, and he had loving, and it just came naturally. It made my heart flutter when I saw that. So I guess you're right. It is innate.
Well, thank you, Harry. I think that's a good spot to start looking at some of the text that we have. That's a lovely story, and I appreciate you sharing it. Let me pull up all of the slides. Whoops. So here are some of our definitions of loving kindness. The Hebrew word is chesed, as you'll see in the 3rd bullet. I think part of it is about leaving the path of least resistance. Like your Harry's grandson could have just been like, hey, I got my squirt gun. It's not really my issue. Let the brothers duke it out. But he did something beyond what was necessary. It's also doing something for another without expecting anything in return. Again, he wasn't like, doesn't sound like he asked for anything in return for the squirt gun. He just was doing a kind thing. And this next one speaks to what Randy was talking about. It's from Pirkei Avot, a very, very well-known teaching. The world rests on 3 things: Torah, service of God, and acts of loving kindness. So let's talk about that for a minute. What does it mean to say that, Torah, acts of loving kindness, service of the divine? What does it mean for the world to rest on those things?
Can you just repeat your question? Because it kind of got muddled in my ears and I didn't hear it right.
Sure, I'm just asking for an interpretation of this, the world rests on Torah, service to God, and acts of loving kindness. Especially we're looking at loving kindness, but in the chat also. Any thoughts about this? Okay, we have Irene, then we have Paul.
Yeah, Paul.
The other Paul.
Yeah.
Eileen, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear him say that. I think it means that those are the glue that holds everything together. And without them, I think no matter what else you're doing, everything would fall apart.
The glue that holds everything together. Thank you. Okay.
I was thinking that the term acts of loving kindness in that particular paragraph spoke to me of community. Without acts of loving kindness, you would not have community, which is what makes the world go round. And so the world would just absolutely suck if there was no acts of loving kindness. We would not have community or society.
Yeah, we wouldn't have, we may or may not have society, but it would be a pretty sucky society. I agree with you. There's a lot of interpretations that the reason why Sodom and Gomorrah was was destroyed was because there was no hospitality, there was no kindness in that community. And that was unacceptable. Also notice it doesn't say thoughts of loving kindness, it says acts of loving kindness. Bonnie, I don't know if you were trying to say something, if you were just agreeing with me.
Yes and yes. My feeling is that you can have all those thoughts in your head, but if you do not act on them, not thinking that you're going to get anything back in return, but it is I don't want to say the right thing to do, it is the thing to do. I think we would have society, but it would be a pretty miserable one. I think what community does, at least Jewish community, is create a safe place for people to support each other and care about each other. And I think sometimes for me, and I have a specific thing I was thinking about, that if I do chesed, I don't stop and say, I'm going to do chesed. It just seems to be the right thing to do. And the piece I was thinking about was several weeks ago, one of them, we've had a lot of losses in the two synagogues I belong to. And at Beth Am, they were looking for people to be a shomer at the funeral, before the funeral. And I've never done it. And I thought, this is a perfect time for me to do it. I had no idea it was going to be on Zoom. I had no idea that I wasn't going to see anybody because I signed up. There was nobody to partner with, but I knew it was the right thing to do. And I hadn't really read this section to know that if you do something for someone who is no longer alive, there is no chance of that person reciprocating in any way. It just felt right. It was weird for an hour to sit there and read Psalms and Pirkei Avot, but it also felt great. So it was the act of doing it.
Thank you, Bonnie. That's such a wonderful example. And as you say, caring for the dead is one of the sort of classic acts of chesed, acts of loving kindness, and it is just pure kindness to do that, and to really show honor to someone, and their body after they're gone. Harry, did I see your hand? And then Paul. Harry, please remember to unmute.
There's a nice quote I heard in the past about chesed. It goes something like this: we make a living by what we make. It's transactional. We make a life in what we give.
Beautiful.
It's the giving is where we find life. So I put it in the I put the quote in the chat if anybody wants to copy it.
Thank you. And Paul, and then Karen.
Yeah, I've been really struggling, scratching my head about nothing was coming up, but there's something about getting out of my, I think I'm saying it incorrectly, but what I saw in one of the lines you had up before was to sort of getting out of your comfort zone. You're doing something that may not be what you're comfortable doing, but it's the right thing in some way. And so there are times in the last year when, I've been mentoring a lot of people at work that are younger than me, age of my kids, basically. And doing this over Zoom, and some of them have been struggling, trying to figure out what to do with their lives. They're working in a company that I'm working in, and it's their first job, and they're not sure about whether they want to move on or all that. And there have been a few times where I can see that there is something that is so heavy emotionally, heavy in the sense of just being a burden that the other person has. And so it's not my training, it's not what I was raised to do, but in the moment, I realized I just need to let them know I see it and I accept it, you know, whatever that might be. And so, you know, I was not expecting whether, you know, I didn't have any expectations about how that would be received on their end. I just had worked very hard at creating a safe space in terms of our interactions up to that point, so that this could be, you know, I could say something, or I could, you know, make an observation and it would be received in a way that was positive, but I didn't know, you know, it's just, like I said, it's not been my training to do that, but again, it felt just like the right thing to do, and I went with it.
Well, thank you, Paul. And sometimes the biggest act of kindness we can do is just to create a safe space for someone to share and to witness what they have to say. Karen.
So I was thinking about intentions versus actions, and actions are often rewarded or there are consequences, but it's really hard to have a reward or a consequence for an intention, something that's not shared. And so the idea that the world is bettered by acts of kindness makes a lot of sense. It would be very hard to better the world by thoughts of kindness, because you can't do anything with your intention doesn't do anything, but you can do something with your intention.
I'm not sure, I'll be honest, I'm not sure I completely followed that. Would you mind just re-explaining it again?
We don't get rewarded or punished for thoughts because others don't really know what they are.
Mhm.
Those are internal. But we do get rewarded and or consequences for actions. So in order for the world to blossom as a result of kindness, I think it would have to be acts of kindness and not thoughts of kindness, because who would know what we're thinking unless we act upon those thoughts?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's action versus intent.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for repeating that. And what I was thinking about is, you know, sometimes our thoughts might not be kind, but we can still act in a kind way. Like my thoughts towards this taxi driver were not particularly kind, but I decided I was going to act in a kind way anyway, you know, which was not the path of least resistance. So even sometimes when we're not feeling it, when we're not thinking it that way, and again, I don't credit this as like something innate, this was very much leaning on the practice. And it's like, okay, well, this is what this Jewish practice suggests how we act and how we show up in the situation. So I'm just going to do that, even though I'd really like to tell this person off. And I feel like it worked out. It made for a better experience for everybody.
So what was nice was that you kept your negative thought to yourself and you acted with loving kindness.
Yes.
And that's what makes the world a better place.
Yeah, and I think it's, I think it's an opportunity we all have. And I'm sure that we all have had those moments where we've shown up for someone when it's been a really long day and, you know, we're teaching, it's the end of the day and we're teaching in the classroom and we just want to go and put our feet up and have a cup of water, a cup of coffee or a glass of wine or something, but the kid needs us after school and we're gonna hang out with them, you know, or our friend calls and, you know, it's our birthday party, but they really need to tell us something bad that's happened and we're going to be there for them. So it's a capacity that we all have and that we've all done at one point or another. And the more that we can be conscious and thoughtful, the more opportunities will present themselves, the more tests and opportunities will present themselves. I have one more I want to share before we get to the breakouts, just because someone brought up self-kindness. And here, this is from the Talmud, 3 ways that loving kindness is superior to charity. Kindness can be done with one's person or one's time and one's money. You can do kindness for someone who's rich and poor. And you can do kindness, you don't give charity to the dead, but you can do acts of chesed, acts of loving kindness to both the living and the dead. So the question is, what about self-kindness? Would we ever give charity to ourselves? How is self-care different from self-charity? Yeah, Carrie.
I think this relates. I was taking a painting class, and this morning I've been having trouble with it, and I really didn't want to go today. I really didn't want to go. I stressed about it. I woke up in the middle of the night about it. And finally, I said to myself, you don't have to go. It's okay. The world's not going to end if you miss this class, if you never go back again. And I felt so relieved after that. And I think that was an act of loving kindness to myself, to give myself permission to honor my feelings.
Thanks for sharing that, Carrie. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Nancy, I saw your hand, and then Kaya.
Yeah, I'm having trouble with my internet. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because I can't see anybody. It's been very, very strange today. But that is because I am strange today. Okay, I feel very safe in this group, and I just want to share this. And this is part of loving kindness to me. I now have a sudden severe loss of hearing in my ear. And I found that out today. They don't know what's going on. And I may have to live the rest of my life like this, not hearing out of my right ear. And it came on yesterday, and it got progressively worse. And so the doctor took me in today, and I had an audiology test, and I'm freaking out. So my loving kindness has to be to take care of me and know, settle down. You don't know the whole story yet. Wait till you hear from the doctor tomorrow to put me on some kind of regimen to see if this works. But I could have lost the hearing for good. And the kindness that comes is just to take a breath and know that all will be okay. Like somehow I'll get through it. And I just felt I needed to share that with my Mussar family because I'm scared.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Nancy. And I'm glad you felt comfortable sharing that here. And we're all listening with an open heart. And I just turned on the transcript, which I had asked for. But I want just let's all just take a moment and send Nancy our love and support, and let you feel held by the group for just a moment.
Thank you.
Hiya, you're up next.
I just want to first send my love to you, Nancy. And, there's not words, it's just a feeling that I want to send your way. I think oftentimes the self-love is so important.
I can't see anybody. You're all are little black squares, but thank you.
I just really think that we need to think, what would I tell? Oftentimes we're very cruel to ourselves, and we don't, remember, first of all, God made us the way, this is a product, this is a gift that we've been given from God, this body, this mind, this being. And so I think it's really important that, what would I say to a good friend when I'm hurting, dear friend, and it's like, I need to talk to myself as dear friend, because I know there's things that, oh, gee, that was stupid to do, or, oh, what was wrong with you? Why does this always happen? Instead of, oh, I'm sorry, friend. Oh, I feel for you. I want to be there for you. What can I do for you? And I think that we're doing God's work when we're being compassionate to ourselves as well as others, because this is a gift we've been given.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a wonderful tie-in to our sharing exercise, which we'll do after we hear from Randy.
Yeah, I just was thinking that loving kindness, in sort of a mystical way, it's tied together with all good things. And if we do something loving, kind to ourselves, I do believe it flows from there to others. We do something for someone else, and it flows back to us. That it's that idea that if doing one small thing, it really changes the whole world. And I am amazed when I think of things people have done for me. Loving kindness is, I think, the most valuable thing, and it can be the smallest act the person didn't even know. And that how much loving kindness can fit in a small thing is quite a remarkable thing. And I was thinking, we talked about caring for people that passed on, but the other thing, we all do pass on ourselves. And in thinking, I did some estate planning, and it makes me thoughtful, because a kindness done in the here and now, just the smallest thing, I think it's so much easier to put loving kindness in it. I don't know quite how to say that, but it makes me thoughtful of, what it's a kindness given to us, that in being alive, that we can practice.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. It reminds me of a teaching I heard, which is, we're not supposed to go do mitzvot in a cemetery. There's certain things you're not supposed to do by the grave, because the dead person can no longer do them. And so you don't want them to, quote, feel bad because they can no longer, participate in some of these acts of service or acts of kindness, which I'm not sure. I actually disagree with that particular teaching, but I think the spirit of it really makes sense to me, is that, when we're alive, that's our chance to do these things. And after we're gone, we don't know what happens, but we do know that we're not going to be interacting in the world the way that we can today. Okay, so we have talked about, emulating the divine. And this is a very famous passage. You'll recognize it from like high holiday services. The Hebrew is Adonai, Adonai, El Rahum, Vehanun. These are the 13 attributes. They're also known as the 13 attributes. It's from the book of Exodus. Forgive me for doing all the reading today, but I'm just trying to keep us moving, because the conversation's been so rich. The divine passed before Moses and proclaimed, Adonai, Adonai, benevolent one, who is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, and abundant in loving kindness and truth, preserving loving kindness for thousands, forgiving iniquity and rebellion and sin, yet he is not completely clear of sin. So, and I'll copy this in the chat, but with your partner, maybe discuss, whether or not you're comfortable with the divinity. Are these attributes worth emulating? And what would it mean for you to kind of emulate or try to model yourself on loving kindness? I'm going to open all these rooms. Share this in the chat. And away we go. Are you going to join the breakout rooms? There we go. Well, for those of you who have been streaming, well, hello, welcome back. Bonnie, you're jumping right in.
Well, because I have a question, and I've had this question for weeks now. Are you, Greg, comfortable in making this an hour and 15-minute class as opposed to an hour where I feel like I'm pushing because we're going to run out of time? I don't know if it's doable, but I had to ask, especially in the breakout sessions.
Well,
I second that.
Okay, well, I see there's interest. Let me think about it. I will as I've been known to say, I will percolate on that. And we shall see. So given that it was a little bit rushed, did anyone sort of have any insights about maybe what it might mean to sort of emulate loving kindness a little bit more in their own lives? Carol, then Chaya.
We came up with an interesting idea about the piece on slow to anger. And one of the things was sometimes you shouldn't be slow to anger. But then on the other hand, does slow to anger mean don't get angry, or does it mean be slow to act on anger? Think it through so that when you do act, and maybe you should, if it's a justice thing or kindness thing, you should, that what you do is productive, is helpful, and not any more hurtful than it has to be. Which I thought that discussion for me was really interesting, because anger is also an important emotion, but it needs to be tempered by loving kindness.
Yeah, that's a wonderful insights. Thank you, Carol. Anyone else care to share?
Yeah, I was next.
Hi, yes, you're next.
I think it's back to what I said earlier about, we talked a little bit in our group, and a couple people agreed. I really do believe, how can we be, if we are not, go back to, Herzl, if I'm not for myself, who will be? If for myself only, blah, blah, blah. I really, truly believe that, how can we truly be compassionate to others and share loving kindness if we don't even know how to give it to ourselves?
Thank you, Chaya. And that's why we're all here, is to learn, how to, one of the words for Mussar is tikkun midot, to repair of the soul traits, repair of the soul. So it is easy to say, yeah, I should love myself, but there's a lot of things that can get in the way. Mussar practice can help. Sometimes professional therapy is required, and but it is absolutely fundamental. Okay, we'll have a quick word from Karen, and then I'll share one more thing, and we'll do our closeout.
I'm not sure if this exactly answers the question. And so if it's something you'd rather me share next week, let me know. What I wanted to share is, you said, how do we emulate loving kindness? And I have an example of how I got to see loving kindness develop from a television show. And I think it's really worth pondering. Would you like me to share it now?
And I think maybe if it's okay with you, if you could hold that off until next week, just because of where we are on the clock. It could be a very nice way to kind of open up next week's meeting, if that's
Absolutely.
okay with you.
Absolutely.
Great, great. One thing that we were doing for a while and then we've gotten away from was to look at practices. So I wanted to put this up. Again, one, if we want to carry our Mussar practice outside of this, a mantra, the one that I wrote for the book, was sustain others without thought of reward, even if they do not deserve it. Now, this doesn't mean become a doormat, but it really is to kind of think about, again, how can I, help other people? How can I really sustain others, without the thought of a reward? And then here are some actions to think about. Maybe one to pick one thing on this list. Saying yes to help. That's important to give other people that opportunity to do an act of chesed. It's also part of the self-care. It's also part of self-love. Maybe doing more than your share. Loving work less. That means if you might really love your job and be neglecting other parts of your life. As a recovering workaholic, that's a trap that I fell into. Forgive someone, even if they're at fault. Maybe just out of loving kindness, you can make the first word, make the first move. And of course, visit or call someone who is sick. Visiting the sick is another one of the classic acts of loving kindness. So with that, let us all close our eyes. And take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth. Okay. Now I'd like you to visualize yourself doing an act of chesed. Doing something to sustain someone else. Maybe it's calling a sick person. Maybe it's attending a shiva. Maybe it's creating time to take a hot bath. Visualize yourself taking this action. Make it as specific and detailed as possible. Who is it that you're calling? What time and day is it that you're taking this action? And imagine that as you're taking it, one small crack in this world becomes repaired. One break in the foundation is resealed. And one person is smiling at a time they wouldn't otherwise have been smiling. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, friends, thank you so much for being here today and sharing from the heart. Nancy, we're all thinking about you and wishing you all a very good week.
Can I just offer a quick blessing as